And let's hit record. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Jessica Corvo, and I am hosting a mental health extravaganza. We are focusing on Monday for mental madness, which is helping people understand the journey, what happens behind closed doors, to go from some kind of illness into wellness, some kind of ordinary into extraordinary, some kind of magic into even more magic. On Wednesdays, we host a lot of workshops and just simple tools that you guys can use individually or in your corporate settings to boost your mental stability, emotional kind of balance, and overall health and wellness. And then on Friday, we have fitness challenges. So that said, I have the great pleasure and honor of having an open-ended discussion, jam session, with two of my friends that focus a lot of their time and energy to help people in the workplace. Their topics, or chosen topics, are preventing burnout. And we are just going to keep it really open. We might share a few secrets of our own mental health and lack thereof on time to time. And which is going to be different things for everyone to kind of hopefully, number one, relate to. And once you fall in love with these beautiful human beings, you're going to want to do business with them. Trust me. So with that said, Davida, thank you so much. And Wilcox, thank you so much. How are you guys doing today?
Oh, good. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah.
So with that said, where are we based in the world?
Well, I think I'm in the United States. I'm on the West Coast, currently in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And Kindle Global is technically based in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And Davida, I don't want to step in all over you.
And I myself am located in Israel, by the way, right by the border with Lebanon. So we're kind of going global here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So one of the magical things that I asked, the reason why I asked is because we get so many different perspectives. So when we're based in the West Coast of the US, you have a lot more holistic approaches and a lot more kind of grounded with the environment approaches to health, which I think is phenomenal. And then when we're based in Sweden, Sweden actually has a lot more, I think, also grounded kind of nature-based modalities for approaching and having conversations about health and wellness. And then over in Israel, there's a lot of turmoil kind of going on a regular basis, which gives
always. Yeah.
Perfect opportunity to make sure that we're constantly having that reflection between our internal world and our external world to understand how each is affecting simultaneously what's happening inside that's allowing us to see certain things on the outside at the same time as what's happening on the outside that's affecting how we view things and experience things from the inside. So thank you both for being able to kind of put that foundation out to kind of all these different perspectives of what we're going into. So I think maybe I'll start with outing myself. I've never been clinically diagnosed despite my great efforts of having any kind of labels with illness. However, I'm a survivor of trauma. So I've been in that space quite a lot of being the dumping ground or the collateral damage for other people that have not been able to manage their own wellness in productive ways. For either of you, what is your experience on the illness side of things? We have so much politeness going on. Wilcox, we'll start with you.
Okay. So the only things I've been diagnosed with are ADHD. I was a hyperactive child. And there were several trauma experiences in my life, but it wasn't until I was an adult about 8 years ago, I had a trauma experience and was diagnosed with PTSD. And that has been a huge challenge to try to manage. I've dealt with burnout twice in my life where I actually hit the wall and collapsed, kind of levels. I learned slowly, but I am working on it. And so I come to this topic with some personal familiarity. Like, yes, I know, I understand how this is and how hard it is sometimes to reprogram yourself to have different habits.
The process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I myself have never been to therapy. I don't know why. Never use it. But I felt supported throughout different times of my life. My friends and my spouse. I want to refer to a question from another angle, which is the environment, society I grew up in. So you mentioned Israel and the turmoil, and here it's not, or at least up until a few years ago, it's not very common to have an open conversation about the emotional situation and or mental health. A big part of it is because we are obliged to serve in the army, and you're supposed to appear as tough. I was a commander officer, and I was not allowed to expose my feelings in front of my soldiers. And when we have, for example, went through a very traumatic event, I had to stood there, poker face, and told them about what happened and not to show my feelings. And I thought that's perfectly normal. I mean, it took me many years afterwards, and also living in Sweden and do the work that I do now, to understand how problematic it is and wrong it is that we cannot express our emotions, because we bring this mindset, this culture into the workplace, into organizations, into systems, into hospitals, into the education system. It spills over to many aspects in society. It is changing. I can't say that it's not. I mean, we are seeing change in recent years, but there's so much work to do there in that respect.
Absolutely. So for everybody listening, we have 3 warriors on the call right now in this session. I mean, if we're dealing with, hyperactive minds, diligence, hypervigilance, situational awareness, whether it's based on specific instances or based on society. We have conditioning, we have social conditioning, we have suppressing the emotions, all these different elements that are normal in society, which are anything but normal. And so the human body and the human spirit is meant to be expressive. That's what, in my opinion, separates us from animals, is our ability to communicate and our ability to articulate all the different things that are happening. And to segue, to honor both of you, thank you so much for being a warrior. Thank you so much for continuing to find graceful ways to turn your experiences into teachable moments, to empower and shed light for others. And just thank you for being, because if you can't help yourself, you can't help others. So thank you. You guys are amazing. So I just want to take that moment to honor really quick.
I appreciate you opening up the space for this kind of conversation. It's not taken for granted,
Absolutely. I mean, one of the sessions we talk about strength, and it's incredible to me. I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it because it's redefining strength. Strength in society context has been, white knuckle, get through at all cost, put your big girl panties on, wipe the tears in private and just get back on it, get back on the horse. And I don't know, the darker side of resilience, right? And for me, it's negative because you silence certain parts of yourself. You suppress that part, and you're only able to show up in fractions rather than in wholeness. And redefining what strength is, sometimes authenticity is oversimplified to somebody crying. Why is authenticity somebody crying? It's because we've suppressed that negative emotion, which isn't negative, so much that this is what people think is human. And I think burnout, because what you guys both focus on is burnout, specifically in the person and also in the workplace. What are your thoughts on burnout is actually an inability, whether it's social or individual, conditioned to suppress parts of you? Because burnout is just your body saying, I need to be heard. We're going to shut this down if you're not going to listen to me.
That's a brilliant point. I'll say something quick and I'll hand it to you, Wilcox, because this is definitely your field. But I would say that is exactly that. It's the physical expression of what we are emotionally feeling or suppressing. And so we can tell ourselves all day long that we are fine. What a problematic word. Again, fine. What is fine, right? It's so neutral. So we can say to ourselves that it's okay when we are not okay. But the body won't lie to us. And one of the main signs of burnout is exhaustion, because your body projects outside what you have suppressed. But Wilcox, really, the somatic side, it's your expertise, so I'm happy if you can elaborate on that.
I will give it a go, and I'll try to keep it short because I could talk for hours about this. But you're both right on it. Like, the body is always speaking to us, and every single message we're getting from the body is for a reason. You know, and I can't, emphasize this enough when I'm talking with people, talking to groups about, like, even a headache. Like, we're so used to, like, oh, I got a headache, I'm going to give myself a tablet and make it go away. Well, why do you have a headache? And all of our problems can be, like, narrowed down to this point. There is a reason for that somatic feeling in the body. Your body's telling you it needs more water, it needs more rest, it needs, something. And we need to change that rather than just trying to, like, suppress what's happening. And there's so much energy given to trying to control oneself, to give the proper image of, like, I'm this in control professional person, I'm going to do the job and I'm going to be right on it, and I'm not going to show my weakness. And that energy is depleting, and it only causes, more stress to tear down the body. So if we're bringing our whole self to our life, like every area of our life, work, our relationships, and everything that we're doing, will have more energy, because the whole self is letting the energy flow, and we can be there and fully present and give 110% because we're embodied, and that is so important to acknowledge.
It's such a simple concept, but such a complicated process. And a lot of people don't understand, because it's like, well, just show up. And it's like, well, yeah, but, and to me, I always have people pause. Coaching resilience, I take it from a perspective that resilience is the ability to bounce back. But once you get into that flow, you're not actually bouncing, you're ebbing and you're flowing. So once you're in touch with yourself, you're kind of like, does this suit me? Is this what I want? Is this what I'm choosing? Am I doing this by default? And so it's a much more gentle approach to things. And I think, you hit the nail on the head with, it's not just what you eat, it's not just what you do. People, news, surroundings, environment.
Right. It's your whole personal system, like your whole body, your whole functionality, mind, body, emotions, soul, all of the things, and your environment, your relationships, the jobs that you work in. How is the actual physical environment? How is the whole planet? Both Davida and I have a master's of science in strategic leadership towards sustainability. And that wasn't just about the environment, that was also about social sustainability. And we have sort of pushed that theory into, like, personal sustainability. How are we as people sustaining ourselves in all of our systems?
Absolutely. Yeah, because once we get to that breaking point, when we have those breakdowns and the body breaks down, it's not because, it could be because of a single event, but more times than not, it's a series of events where we've betrayed ourselves. And that's our body just saying, I can't do this anymore. So you're holding on for dear life, and you're just like, flatline. And there's been so many connections now where people can literally make you sick, because when you're stressed out, it changes the whole dynamics of how the body operates. And then when it changes the dynamics, you're misfiring, your stomach gets clogged up, you're not, regulating. I like to talk about poop, so you're not having that regular poop cycle. It clogs you up. It's a thing. Being an athlete, that's a thing. And so to me, that's an easy way to kind of tell people, are you regular? Are these people allowing you to poop? Is this food allowing you to poop? Like, these are normal conversations to get people thinking, because from a nutrition perspective, from a food perspective, what goes in has to come out. Society, in my opinion, hasn't quite figured out that people are the same. So when you're around different people, if it's going through you, then these are symbiotic relationships. If it's just, getting stuck, this is a toxic situation, and that's going to get that buildup that's just going to cause an implosion.
It is, and there's a lot of, I hear a lot the term toxic work environment. I hear it a lot lately. And I think people have started, using it all over the place, but for a reason. They said it's not always totally clear why, but people sense it, people feel it. And we try to look at the things that are on the surface, right? Like the boss is not treating you well, or the work is boring. It's oftentimes deeper than that. And oftentimes it's constant stress or accumulated stress, which could lead to burnout. And like you said, a single event could be the trigger, but it's most likely the result of a long time deep issues like broken communication, lack of trust, lack of support, lack of recognition, lack of fulfillment, all those things that people cannot identify right away, but when you take a very deep observation, exploration, right, you start noticing what's really going on in a system and which relates to yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in terms of, inner and outer world, I think if you put that in context of a company, right? So maybe the leadership. So if leadership isn't correct with themselves, it makes it very difficult, very, very, very challenging for them to be right with their team. Because if you don't even know how to communicate with yourself, what's happening? I have no idea. How can you communicate that with everyone else? And in my personal opinion, this is the difference between a leader and a manager. Because a leader is empowering and allowing everyone, because they trust, right? So they're allowing people to do what they need to do. They hired them to do a job. All right, get on with it. Let's just get it done. A manager, on the other hand, maybe they oversimplification. You guys are the experts, so call me out on this. Oversimplification is a manager might not be right with themselves. And so if they're not right with themselves, they're actually leading their teams from a fear-based mindset. These are the deliverables. If you're not able to do that, I'm going to find somebody else to replace you. From a PTSD perspective or stress perspective, that is like one of the most dangerous things in the world, because now they're hypervigilant, they're super stressed out, their body is breaking down, they're operating from a place of this is the only solution I have, rather than these are all the different opportunities. And it just creates a heaviness, which creates unhealthy competition, which I would define as toxic, because it's one thing that has consequences in so many different capacities. What do you guys think about that?
It ripples, and also we usually refer to it with a term from psychology, which is emotional contagion. Just basically to say that the state of well-being of a person, especially when this person is in a position of an influence, like a leader, a business leader, manager, whatever, they influence the state of well-being of the people who they connect regularly with, for better or worse. So you can bring a lot of, let's say, positive mindset, although it's quite superficial by itself. But you can bring a lot of practices that will increase well-being. But as long as you don't embody that yourself, you're saying one thing and you are doing something else, right? And it's confusing. So
are you talking about integrity?
I'm talking about alignment. I'm talking about alignment because I don't want to assume worst intention. I don't know, Wilcox, we've seen so many examples of that, right?
Yes, and I'd like to emphasize that a good leader doesn't have to be perfect, and I think that's part of the problem, is that they're trying to be the thing that they're supposed to be, rather than coming authentically to their work. I don't think enough leadership really takes stock of how much they impact the entire company in how they are when they come to work, because the employees are looking to them, even, on a horizontal level, or they're looking at each other, like, what are you doing? And that impact is so strong that the better we can bring ourselves to leadership, the more health we're going to bring to our whole organization. Mm-hmm. And that's really important. And I know I'm missing a point, but I'll come back to it. I'll find it.
No, I think, a couple of things for that, just to add on. I think it's important because I find in the US context, I worked in Asia for 11 years. So my experience professionally in Asia in the corporate settings, every single company, they give you enough rope to hang yourself. that was like the motto. We trust you to do something. We're going to give you enough rope to hang yourself. If you do something wrong, you got to fix it. That's on you. If you're not going to fix it, you're replaced. I think that is a gentle way of empowering people and saying, we're going to give you, one time, shame on you, 2 times, you're out, shame on us for not making the right decision. In the US context, I think we think of things as everything has to be perfect. I don't understand that. So you have this black and white in a good versus bad, which I don't believe in good and bad, but everything has to be right the first time. And it's like, no, have that authentic conversation. Say, yo, I'm struggling right now. I have compassion for my team because I know I'm not perfect. Let's talk about it. And I think that is a missing element that sometimes people, when they have that coat of armor of what is strength, another thing, right?
Right. And I remembered my point. That's vulnerability. Yes. Right. And that the leadership needs to be vulnerable in that same way that it is okay to make mistakes. And some of the best answers come out of situations going badly. Because then you're like, okay, so this went wrong. Instead of like firing everybody, how about we just look at the cause of what happened? How can we do this better? And then the people who are part of that situation actually make it better because they have a deeper understanding of what works.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if I can add to that is, especially when we talk about resilience that has been built over time, is if you jump to a problematic situation, the adversity, and you communicate openly for the first time, your staff will not know what to do with it. So we always encourage them to maintain a very consistent practice of a check-in. It could be a very simple check-in, but being done on a daily basis, all right, on a weekly basis, you create an environment of open communication. So even in our team, even if we sit together with the entire team, which is 6 people when we are all of us, we always start with a check-in, which takes some time. 6 people checking in, sharing about their stuff. And we will never miss that part because we are people before we are employees, worker, producers, whatever. We don't want to separate those. And also sometimes people, they come into the room with their body, with their physical presence, and their mind in someplace else. And if you are not allowed this space during the check-in, you have this division there.
Right. I think there's a point around that of like slowing down to speed up. And in a much bigger picture, there's practical reasons for doing check-ins, part of that letting things stay at the door so that you can be fully present while you're having the meeting. But you're also building a team of people who cares about each other and can step in and support each other. This is a huge way to avoid burnout in any area of your life, is having a support system. And so if you have that support on your team at work, it's going to be a much more resilient, supporting workspace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite, work type things to prevent burnout is the concept of you're not able to keep things forward moving as well, is you're not allowed to voice a problem without offering a solution. So I think a lot of times, as another nuance for burnout, is I'm very big on words. And as a community, if you're surrounded by people that are constantly, outing different problems or what's not working and all this other stuff, if you're already kind of struggling, that's really hard to hold space for. And whether you're open and vulnerable or not, I think that helps out a lot in the workplace to keep people on task and to keep them moving forward with, we're acknowledging what's happening. These are different ways that we can fix it, because then there's something in the mind that actually holds that space for other people to also offer their opinions. And I think that's just an incredibly healthy way to, number one, slow down.
Yeah.
And then number two, create that space for people to kind of check in without having to always talk about what's happening with them on a personal basis.
Right. And there's something about allowing the time to let all of those grievances come to the surface. Like what we've seen is oftentimes what the leadership thinks is the problem is different than the actual problems when you let people speak, right? You give it the space. You're like, okay, like give us all the problems right now, all of them. And like, we just throw them up on like a big whiteboard and like, these are all the problems. Look at all those problems. And then they're like, well, and then it takes the group to come with the solutions. Now you can't expect one person to like come with that. Yeah. And people have different ways of seeing, and that is really important to hear all of the voices. You know, that's another thing that we really work strongly with, is getting all of the voices present and to the table and heard.
Absolutely.
And it's often those quiet people that have the most observations, because they're sitting there watching and they're like, and if you never let them talk,
they're like, all right, I got that.
They're like, oh, so then when you ask them, okay, so what do you think? And they're like, well, I'll tell you, you know, and there's this long list. And but they might not have spoken at a meeting where only the loudest voices who interject all the time are the ones that are heard. You know, that's not getting anywhere either.
I think that's incredibly important to kind of know it is, number one, kind of know your audience and play those strengths, right? Because I'm big energy. I like talking. I don't always have a filter. I'm just like, whatever, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, and let's jam out on it. And I'm fortunate because since I've been consistent with that, my community is very similar. So there's no hurt feelings. There's no, you know, the tug of war. It's just, all right, you know, let's ebb and flow in like these different ways. Sometimes I think in a work environment, it can be a little tricky, because that means on my side, I have to be a lot more aware with, these are not my normal people. Let's kind of read the room a little bit. Sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I don't. I mean,
yeah. Well, this is sometimes where it's really effective to bring in an outsider to facilitate, right? So then not only are you changing the dynamics, but you're taking out the personalization of the history of all the conditioning of whatever's been happening in the workplace. And all of a sudden you have new people coming in and saying, okay, let's look at this differently.
Yeah.
And then they're this objective observer just saying, okay, well, this is what I'm witnessing. This is what I feel and see here that's happening, which can then help the whole group that has been working together and they've been stuck in their way of doing things to finally see things differently.
That, and also to keep it so it won't be overwhelming. Because the idea is not to overwhelm people with challenges, stressors. Like when you put everything on the table and it's not structured or facilitated in a healthy and supportive way, people could get not only overwhelmed, but get hurt, feel triggered, feel just, you know, it's too much, just add to their stress. And that's not the point at all. So it's also about holding the process itself towards well-being, to hold the process in a healthy manner.
Absolutely. So if there was maybe, let's talk about what we do for our own self-care. So it's kind of, I think I'm a visual person. So a lot of people, if you visualize your body, your being as a cup, whatever you have on the inside when you get bumped, that's what comes out. So how do you make sure that everything inside your cup is appropriate to spill out? So you have, you know, maybe like the goodness, the generosity, the collaboration, the, I don't know, any other kind of words, rather than the salty stuff.
I like this metaphor.
How do you check the contents of your cup?
We were having a conversation just before the call between Davida and I, and for me personally, it is about taking care of the cup. You know, if I am getting enough sleep, that is my number one way to be a positive person. If I don't get enough sleep, I can be nasty, you know, like I just not at my best for sure. But like getting the sleep, eating right, taking care of myself, the better I am at managing my whole wellness. That's how I come to bringing my best self to what I'm doing and responding to life and the situations rather than reacting.
Love it.
Cool.
Yeah. And that includes mindfulness and meditation too. I'll have to say.
Good stuff. Yeah, for me, it's mainly about, I can put it under the umbrella of connection. It could be connection to other people, to simply have a meaningful conversation, but also the connection, the inner connection. Personally, to me, it comes through writing. I feel that I can express myself to myself better through writing, and it really helps me to face better with things, to even calm down if I need, and also being outside. Wherever outside, just go outside, be in nature, go for a run, just, be a little physical there. So both areas, the connection and just being outside, helps me to come back to who I want to be. Being responsive rather than reactive, I think.
I love that. I think for me, yes, there's a lot of different moving pieces. So it's the whole picture with, the sleep and the hydration and the food and the nutrition and everything. The one thing that I am miserable to be around if I'm not doing it is movement, physical movement. So teaching classes, walking dogs, going for a walk, grounding, going for a long walk. Best thing for a short temper is a long walk. The actual element of movement is something that I can't go without. That's part of my being, part of my way to literally move through some kind of roadblock, whether it's perceived or actual. And that helps me on a couple different levels. Number one, slow down, so emotional regulation. Number two, get back to my breath, especially if it's a HIIT class or something like this. And then number three, I get that mental focus, because I don't know if you guys know, but I think I have gold medals in the Mental Olympics.
Nice.
I mean, I do it all the time. I'm all the way up there. It's so for me.
I can imagine that. I can imagine.
I want to point out that each one of us is different for our key elements, right? And I think that's why, and Davida and I talk about this all the time, why a lot of stress management techniques don't work, why, following the fad doesn't necessarily work for a person. It's because we're trying to look outside for an answer instead of looking inwards and getting to know ourselves better. And what are my personal needs? How do I respond? What do I need? And that is so important. And again, the better we take care of ourselves, the better we're able to manage our life, our relationships and everything else outside of that experience.
Everything starts inside that cup, right? Take care of that cup and the contents of that cup.
There's different kinds of cups,
So sometimes they're big bottles, sometimes they're coffee cups. You just don't know.
Definitely. And a good way to start is to even look inside the cup, right? Some people can go through the entire life just, carrying this cup without liquid. So it really is about knowing yourself, having some clarity around this very same question that you ask us. So what's working for you? I need to sit down and think about it.
Yeah, one of my favorite exercises to do is when I'm taking on a new client is ask them, what are 3 things that you're struggling with right now? Without hesitation, 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4, 5, and 6. I only ask for 3. On the other side, what are 3 things that are going well? And people will hesitate. And to me, that's a good guide to find out kind of how they're conditioned and where they are mentally and emotionally. And then we start the work, because I meet people where they are, and then we start from there. So a lot of times people don't even realize in the US, and I can only speak for the US because of the statistics I'm more familiar with, we're dealing with morbid obesity. We're dealing with multiple mental illnesses. In the domestic violence space, domestic violence shot up 400% the first 9 weeks of pandemic, World 2.0. This indicates a whole lot of mental instability, lack of self-control, impulse control, emotional eating, all these different types of things that may not be the healthiest for us. And when people are doing that, I oversimplify as people are scared to have that relationship with self. They're doing all these different things to feel better, to get that feel good, instant gratification, because maybe they don't know what it looks like to go inward. They have never modeled it, social conditioning. They're being judged maybe 15 times before they even step out the door. They're not skinny enough. They're not pretty enough. They're not tall enough. They're not wearing the right clothes. And this all kind of plays, I think, on the mental stability and the emotional wellness and ability to regulate. What do you guys think about those types of concepts? And it's actually really hard to ask people to look in when there's no reference to it.
I think part of it, definitely you're right about people are being scared to try out those leaps, those steps that they're not familiar with. And I think they're also struggling. I mean, we all struggle, some people more than others. And the thing is that when people don't have, because they have never been taught or equipped with a healthy outlet for those struggles, they turn to destructive behaviors that you have mentioned, either towards themselves or externally, and then violence starts. And I'm afraid numbers are no better here in Israel. We've seen this in the last few months. So I'd say it's the lack of capacity, which could be taught and practiced, the lack of capacity to deal in a healthy way with the challenges that life provides.
So maybe we can go back to the cup analogy, and we can just make sure that if that cup is empty, we can fill it with some good ingredients.
Right? Or maybe you need a new cup, or you need to fix the cup. You know, it might have a hole in the bottom, and that's okay. You know, to know that you have a hole and you need to fix it in a healthy way, rather than some of these behaviors we're mentioning, that we try to stuff the emptiness inside ourselves with all of these things, these behaviors that are not actually constructive for our life. And I think that's so important. And Davida always comes back to this with the support system, right? Having people that you can lean on. And if you don't have those people in your life, find them. You know, find the friends, get a therapist, get a coach, and get the right support system. You know, just any therapist isn't the right therapist. You know, you might need to find the person who really works with you and is helping you fix the hole in a way that keeps your personal integrity. You know, and that could be different person to person. It's not an easy journey. And by no means do we want to say that it is, but it's being willing to just take the next step and the next step and the next step. And sometimes that's all you can do. Just like, okay, I can do this next step, and that's good enough. You don't have to be perfect tomorrow. You know, it's like what needs to happen this next day, and letting that be okay. Being gentle with oneself is so important. Allowing the mistakes, learning from the mistakes, like, okay, all right, next day, we're going to be there. We're going to be present. We're going to show up in a healthy way. You know?
So when you're dancing between, I guess, the ego and the soul, or the self, the concept of self, and they're having a tug of war, and you might be a little bit out of alignment or out of integrity. When you have that ego moment, how do you guys handle that ego moment?
Think about that.
For me, like the other day, for instance, somebody said something and I wanted to take it personal. And rather than take it personal, I allowed myself to feel it for a couple minutes. I felt all these different volcanoes. It was my like society anger that was coming up. Ego wanted to protect me. I wanted to bite back. I took a sip of water, took a deep breath. I'm like, yo, ego, I was like, you're out of control right now. That was really quick. And then I thanked my ego and I was like, we're good. I got this. And then I got back into my heart. So sometimes for me, it's literally thinking of myself as multiple people, because it's the different components that are fragmented, and it's bringing it together in a jovial way with not shaming, but that's how I deal with it. What do you guys do?
Personally,
voicing it now, I feel crazy, by the way. So thank you for
No, not at all.
I was about to say something about the self-talk, and you covered it so well. I'll say something from a different field that I totally love to use personally and professionally, which is the nonviolent communication approach. And without getting into too many details, because we can talk about it for hours, one of the premises of nonviolent communication is to identify and express the needs or the unmet needs. And if I'm being very honest with myself in the moment, and I'm able to observe the situation, hopefully, and park the ego side, I can ask myself, what do you really need now? What do you really need now? Right? So maybe I needed recognition or someone to value my efforts. Maybe I just need a hug. Maybe I need to be alone. Leave me alone. This is what I need. As long as I can say it in a respectful way, I'm okay with that. And for me, it goes to this conversation or framing around needs or unmet needs. And from there, it's an easier way to understand what's going on, but also to treat it well.
Mm. I think there's elements to all three of us is that observer quality, right? And how important that is to be able to take that time to reflect. Sometimes I wish I were the extroverted, external processor, but I'm really not. And it takes me a while to come back and center with myself. Like sometimes I really need to take some time away to be like, okay, what is really going on in here? And it's similar to what Davida said, I wouldn't necessarily apply it to like my needs, but that's the truth of it. What is really happening here that's not being addressed? Because again, your feelings are also information that your psyche is trying to tell you something. And sometimes it's healthy and sometimes it's not. And to take that moment to think through it rather than reacting is be like, okay, what is actually happening here? Is this response to the situation really me? Is it the cultural me? Is like, if there's something happening here with my own personal state that's not being addressed and taken care of? I've been working with a group about unprogramming the racialized mind, right? And how deep so many of our beliefs are in our nature. It feels like our nature because it comes up without thinking about it because it's been programmed from society. And that is with all things. Society has programmed us. You can't argue that. And do we want to go with that program, or do we want to rewrite, a better life, a better future? And that's entirely possible, but it takes that internal work, right? So for me, it is this sort of philosophical process. If I need to think through all the bits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take what you like and leave the rest, right? Everything in life is take what you like, take what you need and leave the rest. I think that it's incredible on how, number one, again, big compliment to both of you, bright lights, emotionally regulated, balanced mind, equanimity to the next level, and very different approaches. For me, I'm like the puppy dog that's just, like, and like big energy and just let's just, do like a million different things. And it takes me a lot to kind of calm that down. So even in my coping or my tools, everything is usually high energy, very efficient. Come on, A-type, like let's get it done and give the ego something to do in order to quantify it, and then we can go and breathe. That when I'm in that space, I recognize that I'm in my trauma space. I'm operating from survival. That's not me. I think it's me, but it's not me, because that's when I'm hypervigilant. And so it's interesting because if I'm around a whole bunch of A-type personalities that are similar, that's dangerous for me. I think that's a healthy environment, but it's not, because these are people that feed into what is actually my coping rather than my tools. And so I think constantly having that reevaluation of who's around us, what's serving us, what do we need at that specific moment as we're ebbing and flowing and everything to get us back, into that heart and into that alignment or integrity is super important. Super. Just when you figure it out, plot twist. We're gonna go deeper.
Yeah, I mean, that's life, right? It would be boring otherwise, but it's challenging at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have so much respect for the work that you guys do, and just, the presence and the open-heartedness and the willingness to have, an open dialogue about this. It's not easy, especially, in the context of all the things that are happening. The world shut down just over a year ago. We had to make big pivots on how to manage teams in healthy ways, constructive ways that were keeping in mind the individual while it's also paying attention to the bottom line. Now we're going through a reopening, so it's kind of the same thing, just a hybrid. This is business as usual. This is like, oh my goodness, what's happening? And now as we kind of open up into a different space where the conversations have been normalized about personal well-being. The conversations are starting to be normalized on what are you doing for self-care, and it's not just bubble baths. It could be as simple as saying, I need a minute. It could be as simple as saying, I don't know how to process this. Can you help me?
Yeah, and one, I guess, positive result from the pandemic is that people had the time and space, hopefully the willingness to actually pause and then reflect, right? Is it even worth to go back to normal? What is this normal? How do we define our personal well-being and success and everything? So, but it takes some, not only effort, it takes some courage there to re-examine our routines and to actually act upon that if we want to change it. But we're not here for the easy, we're here to do the right thing. So
it is a wonderful opportunity to think through it and how we want to do things differently.
Absolutely. I can't thank you guys enough for being willing to have these conversations. I think that a lot of the people in my community and a lot of my networks, a lot of them are in the entrepreneurial space. And so they have that possibility to kind of create their own work environments. You guys are kind of the fix-it people. And so you go into established workplaces and you help them be a little bit more balanced, bring a little bit more love, a little bit more intention, a little bit more kind of awareness so that people can tick all those boxes. Okay, prevent burnout, increase productivity, reduce turnover, keep people happy, keep people communicating in healthy and efficient ways, build stronger teams. And so I think, a big compliment to the work that you do. It's you're never going to have troubles finding clients. I know that for a fact. And hopefully people are able to receive you guys with open hearts. So maybe for the next couple of minutes, if you guys want to talk about what you guys do professionally, this is kind of a segue. Now that people have already fallen in love with you guys as individuals, they want to spend all of their money with you and hire you to help guide their teams into wellness. So tell me a little bit about the company.
You put it so well. I'm gonna.
I'm a good hype person for people sometimes.
We facilitate processes and we facilitate participatory processes, and both are important because it's never about a quick fix and finding those hacks. So we step into work with a system, whether it's a company, organization, small business, big, it doesn't matter, a department, and we work with the people. We start with the leaders because we want the process to come with all the support and engagement of the leadership, and we facilitate for them and with them a process with the purpose to cultivate well-being. We envision with them together what could well-being look like in this organization. We map the situation, maybe the challenges or the stressors, and then we bridge the gap. We bridge the gap between the current situation and their envisioned state of well-being. And then the interesting part comes when people start to share and talk, and we go from the system level to the individual level and back. It's a very iterative process. It's never too linear, because that's not life, right? Wilcox, you want to add on the participatory part? I feel that you can describe it so much better.
I don't know. I thought you did a pretty good job. And I guess the thing I want to come with, because I'm the systems person, I'm like, let's do the little processes that we have, that even though it's a bespoke process, it's like every way that we come to work with a company or a group of people is specifically designed for them. And that's sometimes why it's hard to communicate. What do you do? Well, that depends on the situation. And we bring all of these different tools, and we do have processes that we work with that are kind of like an outline of how we like to work with the facilitatory process to get everybody engaged, to find the root of the problem, not just address things in a superficial way, but to really dig as deep as we can get with as much time as we can get. It's always like, how much can you fit into one, time? And it's not just that they're not willing to invest, it's like they have other work to do, right? So trying to streamline that into fit in, a busy work culture, is something that we work with, and we do that. But we take these different tools from different facilitation disciplines that we've worked with. We have our tools from our sustainability training, the nonviolent communication that Davida was mentioning, but we grab from all these different things. I mean, I have 25 years in the holistic practitioner field, so I've been working with wellness on that level for a long time, and I bring that stuff in. And that's part of the fun and the magic of what we do, is that it is specifically designed for each group.
I love that.
It's more interesting for us. It's more interesting for us because it never repeats, right? It's never the same.
Yeah. I think that it's incredibly important, because I feel a lot of companies kind of in the wellness space, there's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of people that see it as an opportunity to make a lot of money, but they don't necessarily have the tools to execute. And the thing that I can appreciate about you guys is, and your organization as a whole, is the fact that, number one, it's the people. It's always the people. So you guys are coming from like a military background and the stoicism, and then working through that type of framing and that type of conditioning. And then you have, the Northwest, US, where you got all those completely different, night and day. We got a bunch of hippies and we got a bunch of military. I'm sorry, oversimplification. That's what we're going with.
And diversity is a huge factor in all of this.
Yeah.
We find in facilitation that the more diverse you have of participants, the better you come to solutions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have conversations all the time. We love it within our whole team. We all come from different places, different backgrounds, and the discussion is rich and the solutions are rich to really work with. Okay, so in this situation, certain things work, but they won't work over here. How do we adapt that?
Absolutely. It's the power of asking questions, right? So like looping back to the very beginning, if you have that mindset, if you're going to bring a problem, also bring a solution. When you bring that solution, it gives everybody permission to also interject and give their perspective and their, with all of their conditioning and their framing and their lens to life. And then somewhere in the middle of all of it, it's kind of magical, because magical people bring out the magic in others. And you're like, wait, I hadn't thought about that. And then through that dialogue, you come up with something that isn't on this side, it's not on that side, but something kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's hard to plan. You don't want to come with a set program, because it's not going to fit. And I think that's a lot of reasons why, again, these plug-in programs don't work. I don't know what the actual percentage is, but I know that business plans have a 70% failure rate. Why do we even do it? Because business plans don't match life. Plug-in solutions don't match life. So you have to evolve with the plan as you're going. It's an important part of that iterative process to be like, what needs to happen next? What's working, what's not working? Drop what's not working, prototype it. Okay, go with what is working and find that in the process that's happening in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there's one wish that I would like all of our listeners to benefit from, it's understanding the mindset and the heart of the people that you guys hire and the people that you guys allow into your personal and your professional space. I think we've had, big warrior conversations with the two of you coming from a place of genuine, care and compassion. And I think anyone would undoubtedly and unquestionably benefit from not only being in your presence, but also retaining your services. And so I think that, again, I appreciate you guys having this open dialogue. I appreciate you guys being able to kind of, jam out with a couple topics, illness, wellness, it's all the same. We're all on the same journey to get to the end line of alignment and joy.
Well, I'm thriving. We got to throw that in there because that's part of what we want.
Absolutely.
The whys we're here is we want ourselves to thrive in our lives. We want the individuals to thrive. We want organizations to thrive. We want the world to thrive. Absolutely. We want life to be amazing. Why put up with life as it has been, Let's really look at how to create ways to make life beautiful.
Absolutely. When I was still living in Singapore, my first company, it was bridging the gap between the private and public sector. And it was solutions to end poverty. I had 42 partnerships in a year, and I only had 3 people pay for my services. I'm like, I'm good at this, but I'm terrible at that. Let me figure out how to make that a balance. And then I decided that a lot of people were just looking for a solution to tick the box. They didn't actually want any actual change, right? Mm-hmm. So big learning. And then that's when I got into coaching, because I was like, all right, well then let's work with the individual. And now in the past 6 months, that's healthy. Let's open up kind of into the corporate space. For me, I don't do the talking. I think there's relevance in it. I think it's important, but for me, my in is the movement. So let's get your teams moving. Let's do that micro workout. Let's not talk about it. Let's just move through it, literally. You want to talk about it? Go hire these people. Because for me, everything is about getting into the body. And I think a lot of times in the workplace, the problems that come up are because people are anticipating what could be, or they're, reliving what was. And so I'm very simple with let's just get a workout. So if you guys ever need a HIIT training workout as part of your plans, a person who's like, no equipment, no excuses, no shoes, let's get it done.
Got it.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
And it's easy because, not easy, but it's been a really rewarding kind of build, because there's a lot of people, at least I deal with a lot of A-type personalities that don't always want to talk about it because of that strength veil. And so it's an easy conversation because you can get in, do the work, and not have to always address it. So it's powerful on all sides. So again, I commend you guys. If there's one quote, mantra, or nugget that you would like everyone to go away with, what would it be for Mental Health Extravaganza?
I think it's challenge your perspective.
Oh, so good. So good.
I might paraphrase Jane Goodall and say that every day we have a chance to make a difference. So it's up to us to take this choice and think what kind of difference we want to make.
I love it. I love it. Both of them very inward focused and reflective. I love it, love it, love it. So thank you. Thank you guys both for your time and your energy and your open hearts and your sharing. I will definitely drop all details so people can get in touch with you on an individual basis and also on a professional basis. Where can people find you having all your conversations and doing all of your stuff? What's the best place to find you?
The best place is through our website, inkindleglobal.com, and we're also on LinkedIn all the time, all day, So you can find us there. And we can't thank you enough for having us and having this conversation. We are so thrilled to spread the message and really to support people. That's what we are here for from the start. This is the essence of it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It was lovely to have this conversation.
Anytime you guys want to jam out, that's what I do. I'm just like, conversations people don't always talk about, top of the list, let's do it.
Nice.
And I think mental health in the workplace is so incredibly important, and trying to navigate, you know, in the US context, a lot of times, you know, just before the call, when we were talking about that line between illness and wellness, this is an insurance thing. This is a medical thing. This is, people don't want to talk about this because now it's a liability. If you talk about it, then the company kind of, you know, has to take ownership of certain things. So it's a very gray area for a lot of places to kind of bridge that gap. And also with, you know, do you disclose if you have an illness? Do you disclose it to your employer? Because then if something doesn't work out on both sides, they can remove you. Illinois is a fire at will, so they don't have to give you a reason for anything. Other states, sometimes they have to give a reason, but they might end up getting sued. On the other side, it's, you know, do you really have facilities if you have somebody dealing with PTSD, if they are coming back from war, and you're in a warehouse, as an example, and they're not actively managing their PTSD, they get scared by something that falls in a warehouse, and all of a sudden you put an entire team at risk. I mean, this is like, these are serious conversations for like a lot of people, and unfortunately, a lot of companies, they don't want to have the conversations yet. They're starting to, but a lot of things I think are kind of like squirrels covering their nuts. I'm very visual, so it's like they don't talk. It's fear, because they're like, if we talk about this, then we have to take ownership of it. And I think that's why a lot of people don't have these conversations.
Right. And that's something I would love to see change in the United States, especially. It doesn't have to be that scary. You know, a lot of times when you turn on the lights, right, because you're hiding things, it's in the dark. You know, when you turn on the lights, all of a sudden the monster isn't there. You know, it's like, oh, you can't address a problem unless you actually look at it, you know, without your fear, and be like, okay, so this is a situation. What do we need to do to support these individuals so they can contribute to society, so they can live a fulfilled life? These are important questions. You know, I spent 10 years living and working in Sweden, and there's a very different way about supporting individuals and all of the time off that they get. And like, sometimes my little American brain and conditioning was like, I don't understand this. It's crazy. But they're also a very successful and thriving country. Okay, so you don't have to do things the American way, which we're conditioned to believe that you have to do things this way to be successful. You can actually take care of people. You can actually give them space to have time off when they need it. And when they come to work, they're actually fully present to be there at work because they've taken care of themselves. Absolutely. It works.
Their cup is filled. Their cup is filled, and it's not broken. So thanks again for your time and your energy and your sharing. And I will drop all contact details so people can find you guys. And I think also join the conversation. So you guys have some pretty powerful conversations. Everything's related around the workplace. Let's normalize, you know, these conversations. Let's break the stigmas of any kind of fear. And, you know, it's just, everything is #stronger together. And let's just continue to have these conversations. Thanks again for your time.
Yes, thank you.
It's been great.